RandomCity is a parametric ArchiCAD library part created by ManuBIM. This object can be downloaded free of charge from the bimcomponents.com portal. This object works great with ArchiCAD version 16 or higher. It's created for architectural designers to create schematic, randomized cityscapes, as well as various urban layouts. The RandomCity object is great to create professionally looking urban backgrounds for architectural design projects. The form and sizes of the created buildings can be fully randomized to produce a highly sophisticated urban layout. The RandomCity object can be fully customized to create randomized detached houses, row houses, or even skyscrapers, industrial or public building-like volumes. Let's have a closer look at the settings and parameters of the RandomCity object. Here you can see the RandomCity panel of the Object Settings dialog. Let's display the placement page. Here we can define various placement methods to create a random urban landscape. Here, single, linear, grid, or polygon placement methods can be selected. The single placement method will create standalone detached buildings. The linear placement method will place buildings along a linear direction defined by the user on the floor plan. We can select the detached buildings here to create a street, and we can also enter the distance between the building volumes and also define the length of the street. We can also select the terrace houses options to create so-called row houses. And we can also specify different roof styles and arrangements for these buildings. The grid placement method will create random buildings within a predefined grid area. We can enter the number of editable nodes per edges of the grid. Using these nodes, we'll be able to manually adjust the edges of the grid. The buildings will be placed at the intersection points of the grid layout with the grid polygon. Here we can create grid lines with custom dimensions along the X and Y axes. The placement of the buildings can be regular or irregular. The differences between these are visible on the preview image. The polygon placement method will create buildings along a polygon. The number of editable nodes of the polygon can be entered manually. Using these nodes, the sides of the polygon can be edited. Let's display the buildings page. Here we can specify various properties of the buildings. We can choose from a list of building types. The available building types depend on the previously selected placement method. The residential and public building types as well as skyscrapers are available for all types of placement methods. Churches, industrial buildings, stadiums, TV and water towers, and industrial chimneys are available only for the single placement method. The available building forms, layouts, and roof types depend on the selected building type. If the random form option is selected below the building form panel, then we can specify more than one building form. The selected switch on the right-hand side must be used to select multiple building forms. We can also use the Select All and Select None buttons. The dimensions of the building form can also be defined numerically. We can checkmark the random size option and then select a delta value from the list. This percentage value will be used to alter the dimensions and to create random-sized buildings. Let's select a couple of different building forms. And let's create a random city with these settings using the single placement method on the floor plan view. Let's also have a look at the 3D view of the created buildings. Let's select the linear placement method to create a street with random buildings with a single click. Let's also have a look at the grid placement method. With a single click, we can create buildings with random shapes within the grid area. Finally, let's see a quick example of how to create random buildings along a polygon shape. Here you can see the results of the previously created random buildings in the 3D view. Let's see some more advanced settings. Here you can see the Editing Tools page of the Settings dialog. This page provides a set of hotspot editing functions for the previously placed random buildings. For instance, if we used the linear placement method, then we can select the Enable Placement Line option to change the length of the street. By clicking the editable hotspot on the floor plan, we can graphically change the placement line and create additional random buildings along the modified line. Let's open the 3D window and use the editable hotspot to change the height of the placed buildings. Let's see what the effect is of the editable building position option. Please note that now all previously placed buildings have an editable hotspot. With the help of these hotspots, the positions of the individual buildings can be modified. Using the Editable Building Sizes option, we can also alter the various sizes of the individual buildings with the help of these hotspots. The size of the buildings can also be modified in the 3D window with the help of the hotspots. There are additional editing options also available for the grid and polygonal placement methods. We can use the editable hotspots to change the sides of the polygon. Please note that the building placement will instantly and automatically update to reflect these changes. We can checkmark the Set Grid Origin and Direction option to change the placement as well as the direction of the building layout. We can also define a custom plane with 3 points and then place random buildings on this plane. The position of these 3 points can be defined in the floor plan view. The heights of the points can be entered numerically in the Settings dialog. The heights of the points can also be modified in the 3D window using the hotspots. An editing palette can also be displayed to ease the editing of the previously placed random cities. This palette is not available for the single placement method. This editing palette can be freely repositioned and also resized and displays various editing tools. The top icon of the palette allows us to access and modify building forms. Let's click and then drag the hotspot at the lower right corner of this icon towards the right to display additional building forms. Now we can see all the available building forms for a selected random city object. We can select any of the building forms by clicking and then dragging its hotspot upwards. The new building form is now displayed at the top of the palette. We can drag and drop this building form on an existing random city building to replace it with the new form. The very same applies to elevation styles as well. We can select the desired new elevation style and then drag and drop this on the previously placed existing buildings to replace their elevation. The third icon allows us to modify the shape of the roofs. Let's replace some of the flat roofs with pitched roofs by dragging and dropping the new roof shape onto the existing buildings. If we change the position of the palette, then all the tools will be reset to their default values. Using the fourth icon, we can perform various editing operations. With the second option, we can alter the placement positions and angles of random cities. We can create a plane with the help of the next option. We can change the position of the existing buildings with the help of the next option. We can also change the size of the buildings using the next option. We can even demolish buildings individually with the help of the last icon in the editing palette. Simply drag and drop the icon onto an existing building to demolish it. Certainly, we can also build new buildings if we wish to, using the first icon in the palette. Let's now see how to define the default 2D and 3D representation settings for the RandomCity buildings. Let's display the Model View Options dialog and open the RandomCity page of this dialog. Here we can specify the background fill and pens of the area polygons. Various fills and pens can also be specified for the building polygons. We can use uniform pens and background fills for all the buildings. We can also specify custom pens and background fills for the buildings, depending on their heights. The height ranges can also be altered manually here. Let's see an example of this. Here you can see that the floor plan representation of these buildings is different because they have various heights. This is visible on the 3D view. Let's return to the Model View Options palette and see how to change the 3D representation of the buildings. There are 3 different color schemes available: monochrome, grayscale, and ArchiCAD materials. Let's select this option now, and please note that the walls, flat roofs, pitched roofs, as well as the windows can have dedicated colors. Here you can see the results in the 3D window. We can also specify the time of day in the Model View Options dialog. This option is great to create nighttime renderings of your projects with great random cityscapes. The nighttime elevations can be created using more or less light. Here you can see the result of the nighttime elevation with less light, meaning less illuminated windows. Here you can see some rendered images of these buildings using different time of day settings. Here is a daytime view of the buildings. Here is a nighttime view with less lights. And finally, here's a nighttime view with more light. Please note that we can override the previously presented default model view options for individual RandomCity buildings. Let's display the appearance page of the settings dialog. Here we can override the default 2D and 3D representation settings defined at the Model View Options dialog. We can select individual pens for the area and building polygons, and also define various individual colors for the roofs and for the openings and the elevations.